What would it be like to be a secret agent for the world's most elite spy agency? Come with us as we explore the CIA in this edition of Dream Quest.
The agency is very unique among Washington federal bureaucracies. We have a unique charter, a very unique mission, and we are comprised of wonderfully talented, dedicated, patriotic, unique men and women. Our credo is basically a straightforward, very poignant biblical verse from the book of John, and it says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." And that's what we do. We go out and find what it is that's happening around the world that represents some kind of potential national security threat. We analyze the information that we obtain, we pass it to the policymakers, the law enforcement community, the military, and they collectively take national security policy initiatives designed to help keep America safe and sound and for us to enjoy the democratic life that we have. Welcome to the Central Intelligence Agency. You're standing in the lobby of the CIA headquarters building, and you're about to see things and experience a trip here that few outsiders ever get to see. We were formed during World War II, basically after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The time frame in which CIA was the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. The OSS was created as a centralized element of the intelligence gathering. The OSS mission included sabotage, infiltration behind enemy lines, exfiltration.
Yes, this is an undercover agent. At least the popular conception of how such a fellow looks and behaves. He is inconspicuous. He blends with his environment. He is, in short, the ideal agent from the enemy's point of view. He's just the kind of agent the enemy is waiting for with open arms. And for that reason, just the kind of agent you aren't going to be.
I became involved with the agency when I was in undergraduate school, and they approached me on campus. I met the criteria for people they were looking for in the late 60s, early 70s. And I was a pilot and a sport parachutist and had a background in scuba diving and martial arts, and was a good student and spoke languages, and I just met the profile. So they approached me and pretty much flipped the credentials out and said, "Psst, hey kid, how would you like to work for the CIA?" And it took me about a nanosecond to say yes. I thought that'd be pretty neat. I am reminded still to this day of the wonderful Robert Frost quote about two paths diverged in a wood. I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference. Well, I was given an opportunity to take a decidedly less traveled path. I didn't know what was down that road, only that it was CIA and that it was bound to be kind of fun and interesting. I took that path, and my gosh, what an incredible journey this has been. The agency is broken down into what could be thought of as four major corporations. We call them directorates. Three of them are essentially, totally centered here in our headquarters building in McLean, Virginia. Those three are called, in order, the Directorate of Administration, and it's from the administrative side of the house that we do payroll, logistics, security, computer support, all manner of financial, logistical, infrastructural support, building maintenance. The second big component of the agency is the Analytical Directorate. There we have the highest per capita of PhDs and academicians who are responsible for studying and analyzing countries and regions of the world.
An analyst, in my view, is probably one of the most exciting things here in the building. You have to ask yourself, where does all that information go? The satellites that take pictures, satellites that pick up secret conversations that no one else knows about. Well, all of that information comes to a desk where an analyst sits. And so the analyst puts all this information together, and it's a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle. And the idea is to try to put all these pieces together in a way that makes sense, and you can create a picture. And that's where the spies come in a sense. We have a relationship with all these people that we call collectors. We'll call up the National Security Agency and say, is there any way you can pick up more phone conversations involving this person? Or we tell the people who do the satellites, can you start taking pictures of a certain city or a certain production factory where they make, say, airplane parts? And can you tell us what's going on at this factory? So we give them what we call requirements. They gather the information and then send it back to us so we can try to put that puzzle together.
To fly through space, detect radioactivity, and to speak and understand every language on the planet Earth.
Two years ago, the East German regime threw up the wall of shame to split Berlin with this hated symbol of communist tyranny. Today, on the second anniversary, West Berliners honor those who died in attempting to flee to freedom despite the wall. It is these martyrs to human dignity who are honored with wreaths and prayers.
The agency played an enormously important role in ending the Cold War. And the symbol of the closure of the Cold War was, in fact, tearing down the Berlin Wall. But in the end, when the Cold War was over, rather than have one large Soviet dragon, what we have now is a tangle of small poisonous serpents. And it's a lot harder to keep track of those serpents than it was that big dragon. So does the CIA have a post-Cold War role to play? Absolutely.
The fact remains there are still a lot of secrets in Russia. There's a lot of things they don't want us to know still. And so we have to find ways of getting at that information. Now, one of the things we use is the Russian media. We read the Russian newspapers every day, and more importantly, we watch Russian television. For example, in 1994, when there was a civil war in Russia, essentially in a place called Chechnya, there was tremendous television coverage of the war by very aggressive newspaper journalists and television journalists. And we would watch that to basically gather information about how the war was going. Were there a lot of casualties? Was it a horrible war? Were the Russians really bogged down? And that helped our analytical judgments about how bad this war was and it was affecting morale in the Russian military, for example. So television is a very important part of our analysis. For those of you who are already at this point in your life thinking, it might be kind of interesting to work at CIA, I've got to warn you, there's certain things that we look for in people who apply. We have a very rigorous interview process and a background security check because ultimately we have to have people here that we think are trustworthy, who aren't going to reveal secrets to foreign governments or be susceptible to blackmail or bribery.
We are in the Historical Intelligence Collections section of CIA's library. If you watch the movies, you know that the agency is often referred to as the company. Well, that's a Hollywood name. We refer to ourselves here at headquarters as the campus. And in fact, this headquarters building facility very much resembles a college campus university environment. We have, for instance, a absolutely world-class library that occupies 4 floors of our headquarters building. Here, people monitor news programs, newspapers, magazines from all around the world, and we have those magazines and newspapers every day in every language from every country. And sooner or later, if you are a working analyst or doing any kind of project involving a foreign country, a region of the world, an issue in some part of the world, you will be in this library. So if you think as a student that you might like to come to work for this agency someday, you certainly want to start preparing now by going to your own library and spending time there reading, getting familiar with world events, geography, history, because should you come to work for this agency, you'll wind up in our library too.
Coming up next, Senior Operations Officer Chase Brandon takes us up into space, where the CIA keeps an eye on things, and then down into the intriguing world of spy gadgets as Dream Quest continues.
We also have a third large component called the Directorate of Science and Technology. You can sort of think of that as the Q branch, really, of the James Bond movies. We have, again, a very high rate of per capita PhD scientists. We have people who design our computer systems, our technical collection systems, communications capabilities. All of this is generated in-house among our own scientific and research community. We're standing in the atrium area of the new headquarters building. Over my left shoulder, you see 3 wind test tunnel models of 3 of the agency's signature aircraft. In the background, the U-2 Dragon Lady. In the center, the small tagboard D-21 drone. And just to my left here, the SR-71 Blackbird. At one time, CIA had the world's second largest Air Force, second only to the United States Air Force. The U-2 and the SR-71 were then and still are our 2 premier aircraft. Both of them are surveillance aircraft. They carry no armaments. They are not offensive fighter jets. They fly very high. They take very precision, high-altitude pictures. The U-2 was shot down in 1960 by the Soviets. Francis Gary Powers was our pilot. He ejected to safety, was held by the Soviets, later released in exchange for a Russian spy that we had apprehended. Because the U-2 was shot down, in typical technical fashion, CIA designed a new aircraft, the SR-71 Blackbird, which still holds the world speed record as being the fastest plane that takes off and lands on the ground. It flies very high. If you check one of your websites on your computer, we will now admit that the SR-71 flies at 85,000, 90,000 feet, which is right at the edge of space.
Bet you've never seen this. The D-21 is launched at the edge of space from the back of the SR-71 Blackbird.
With 35-year-old cameras, the SR-71 could, in its heyday 30 years ago, take pictures of golf balls on a golf course. And honestly, we could tell you whether those golf balls were Titleist or Wilson. We really can use very, very sophisticated camera technology.
We now know that the Soviet Union has decided to transform Cuba into a base for putting all of the Americas under the nuclear gun.
The United States arrived at the decision for an arms blockade after studying reconnaissance photographs made with high-powered cameras from planes flying several miles from the Cuban coast. These cameras are described as capable of spotting a golf ball on a putting green from 40,000 feet.
And that's 30 years ago. So today, with things orbiting around in deep outer space, the intelligence collection business has become very, very sophisticated. It is imperative that we have these capabilities to know what our enemies and foreign adversaries are doing and planning that affects our national security. CIA remains at the cutting edge of this kind of technology. Again, we have our Directorate of Science and Technology, which designs many of our own collection platforms, and we're very proud of what we do, and we're very effective at how we do it. We're standing in one of the main corridors of CIA headquarters building. On my right, along that wall, you're going to see portraits of all of the former directors of the Central Intelligence Agency back to 1947. And on my left, there are a series of glass cases containing examples of Soviet spy gear that was used against us during the Cold War. Let's stop for a moment and look at this one case. You're going to see the wooden Great Seal of the United States of America, which was presented to our embassy in Moscow by the Russians. It was a nice gift. Unfortunately, as you'll see when you pan down and pick up the little device in the glass case, they had planted a little listening device in the Great Seal of the United States. So their plan was to listen to everything that was said in the morning meeting in the ambassador's office. The whole business of intelligence is a lot like Mad Magazine Spy versus Spy anyway. We countered by designing a very special device that was planted in one of their Xerox machines in one of their embassies abroad, and every time the Russians, the Soviets, made a copy of a document or whatever for themselves, they made one for us, and it was beamed out to a listening post and translated down into a hard copy. And technology is a hugely important part of what happens in the world of intelligence, but also recruiting spies and running foreign agents is an equally important part, and we'll talk about that a bit later.
Stay with us. Next, we'll learn about covert operations and even take a peek inside the top secret CIA Operations Center on Dream Quest.
And then we have the smallest, and in many ways, I suppose, you could justifiably say the most elite component of the CIA, and that is the Directorate of Operations, which for us is also the clandestine service. You are undercover, you live a different lifestyle, often with a different name, you have aliases, you live and travel abroad.
This picture you're about to see is the first cinematic study of the preparation, arrival, and establishment of permanent cover for secret agents.
You're to set up an intelligence organization which will gather information for an SO operation. Are you set on your cover?
Not definitely. I've narrowed it down to two, either a government inspector or a chief mechanic.
Anything that makes people ask questions, even innocent ones, is bad cover.
Basically, we're looking for the character traits of honesty, integrity, patriotism, flexibility, creativity, initiative, moderate risk-taking, using your skills, pitting those skills against real adversarial challenges. And because there are real adversarial challenges, we do have to equip our people to cope with those. And so training is a huge part of becoming an ops officer, and we spend months, in fact, well over a year, almost close to 2 years worth of training. And it involves everything you would imagine. Paramilitary training. We jump out of planes, we learn demolitions, people learn to rappel, do infiltration, exfiltration, survival, disguises, learning to use radios, communication, secret writing, how to recruit agents, how to manage agents, dead drops, high-speed driving, weapons familiarization. It's all there. We do it all.
An agent traveling overtly would have to pass as a national from a neutral country under some sort of commercial cover. When you're crossing a border this way, you should not only act as if you have nothing to hide, you should actually have nothing to hide. Don't bring compromising materials or messages through these controls.
I spent 25 years undercover, and it was an exciting time. It was everything you could imagine a movie script about CIA to entail, and I lived it, acted in it, and enjoyed it immensely. Let's run up real quick to the Operations Center. It's the sort of command central of CIA, if you will, a top secret place. We'll go up on the elevator. The whole business of the clandestine service is to be overseas, developing and ultimately recruiting a network of spies around the world. It's like picking up pieces of the puzzle around the world, and we send them back to headquarters, and all those puzzle pieces are sorted out on our huge dining room table, and our analysts and our scientists and our administrative people all look at these, and they sort them into some kind of picture that lets us know what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Central America, what's going on in particular countries in those regions, and then our analysts write finished intelligence reports and some kind of strategic international policy, some kind of enforcement activity, or some sort of military plan unfolds on the basis of that intelligence.
My name's Noelle. I'm the Senior Duty Officer, and this is the CIA Operations Center. Welcome. We're the 24-hour warning and alert center for the CIA. Basically, we're in charge of waking people up in the middle of the night if something important happens and keeping people updated on what's going on during the day. We have a staff of 5 analytic teams, and we're reading traffic all during the day to find out what's going on in the world. We read 7 international press wires. It's sort of like CNN. We also prepare the president's briefing team. They go downtown to the White House every morning to talk with him about what's going on in the world. When something occurs here, it's very exciting, and it really makes the job fun. It's one of the reasons we all wake up and come in and do this. There's actually a limit to try to get stuff to the president within 10 minutes. When we order pizza, Domino's brings it to the front gate, and then usually someone from our office will go out and pick it up. The pizza gets x-rayed, and depending on whether or not security's feeling magnanimous, they'll let us have the whole thing, or they might take a slice as a toll. So.
I'm standing in front of what we call our Wall of Honor. We have actually two walls of honor and distinction. One opposite me is in recognition of the time frame in which CIA was the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. 116 OSS officers lost their lives during that period. We have one large star on the opposite wall in memoriam to them. In 1947, the National Security Act converted OSS to CIA, and behind me you will see 74 individual stars of those men and women, very brave, patriotic men and women, who died doing what President Bush said we do, defending America and keeping our democratic way of life hale and hearty. When you are in the clandestine service especially, and when you live and work overseas, you do so with great risk, and you do so with very little recognition. And in the end, when the worst kind of tragedy can occur, namely the loss of one of our colleagues, sometimes even in death, agency officers remain anonymous. And on the wall behind me, the 74 stars, there's a book in a glass case that lists the name of some of the fallen agency officers. It doesn't even list half of the names. To me, that's the strongest statement about the level and dedication of service that these patriotic, brave men and women here represent. To work for this agency in general is to take on a certain physical risk, because it makes what they think is a great statement on the part of a terrorist if they can take out somebody from CIA. And we had that happen just under 5 years ago, literally in front of our building. Someone named Miramal Kanzi shot 5 of our agency family members as they were coming to work one morning, and killed 2. So yes, if you work for this agency, there is an inherent risk. If you are an operations officer and you live and travel and work abroad, and you are collecting information, and you are spying and conducting intelligence gathering operations on drug cartels, international criminal gangs, and terrorist organizations, you absolutely are at risk. And it is an implicit, inherent part of taking on the responsibility of being a CIA officer that you accept the kind of risks that go with it.
To be a secret agent for the CIA or to achieve any other dream career takes character, hard work, staying in school, and staying away from drugs. If you've got what it takes, no matter who you are, you can live your dreams. Now, a tribute to some real heroes, unknown but not unsung.
Not a game. There's no room for standing by, hoping things stay the same. Another peaceful night, a luxury for some, for others a God-given right. Everything comes with a price. What price for freedom would you pay? from the chains that bind, from the anchors that weigh us down. What are the faces of liberty? If we knew the truth would set us, the truth would set us free. What price for freedom would you pay? From the chains that bind, from the anchors that weigh us down. What are the faces of liberty? If we knew the truth would set us, the truth would set us free.
Some of you students watching this, young people watching this program, may think, wow, I would like to work for the CIA. Well, we are telling you we would like you to consider working for the CIA. And we look for people fresh out of college who have the requisite language, computer skills, personality traits, flexibility, sense of adventure, some risk-taking characteristics. We look for a lot of things. Basically, and most importantly, we look for honesty, decency, integrity, and you can't fake that because we check you before you come to work here.
This is a really competitive place to get into. We have to hire the best people in the country to work here. And by the best, I mean people with the best academic records. But not only that, people who have really shown that we can trust them, that people who have demonstrated that they can keep secrets. And one of the really important things we look at is whether they have abused drugs at some point in their lives. That's really something you have to stay away from if you want to work in this business.
You can plan a career to come work for the CIA, and you can plan it early. You can start all the way back in grade school if you want to. If you think you like this sort of world and this kind of adventure and you would like to live and travel abroad, start now. Read, be flexible, know world history, know geography, learn languages. And if you can really pass the very stringent litmus test criteria for coming on board here, you might find yourself someday, as I clearly have been, privileged and honored to be part of this wonderful agency. It's also been our privilege to have you here with us today. We hope you have enjoyed what you've seen, and on behalf of our Director of CIA, George Tennant, would like to extend all of you very best wishes, and if you think you want to come to work here, start working on it now.